Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next episode of the PlayFast podcast presented by Q4 Sports Lacrosse. I am Bill Tharp. The screen looks a little different tonight. I am joined, as always, by my man-it's man, Anthony Terranova, but we have a new face joining us. He is the New Jersey boys lacrosse rules interpreter. He is one of the finest lacrosse officials. You may have seen him on ESPN this summer. You may see him on your lacrosse field this spring. He is Keith Glock. Keith, how are you, brother? Welcome back to the podcast.
Dude, thank you for that. I didn't even throw any cash your direction. That was a
introduction.
Banging introduction.
Hey, that's one free time I can yell at you this spring. That's all.
You got it.
So Keith, it's been a year since you've been on the podcast. How was the spring last year? I know we kind of talked about the fans and some of the rules from last year, but kind of put a bow on 2023 for us. How was it from an official's perspective, and how are we looking ahead into 2024?
I was really satisfied with how last season went on pretty much any level that you could look at it. I think the spectators and the kind of sportsmanship was just a drastic step up, which we were all happy to see, I think. And I think from an officiating perspective, you saw some really high level games, and I don't know that there's something that anybody looks back at and goes like, ugh, there's nobody that's like, man, I remember that guy on a game. I was joking, yesterday with one of the guys on my game, and they said, pleasure to meet you. Two of them said, pleasure to meet you. And I said, boys, this is the greatest compliment you could give me. I said, because I saw you like 3 weeks ago, and the fact that you don't remember me is a great thing. So I think to sum up 2023, I don't think that there's anybody that looks back on it and goes, man, the refs really played a factor in that. And that's our goal.
Awesome. So I think, kind of just to lead off, obviously not a ton of rule changes this year. I think the biggest one, and I'm sure you love talking about it, eye black. That's probably
It's not a change, Billy. It's not a change. You guys love talking about it. I don't like talking about it.
It's not a change, but it's now a time-serving penalty.
It's been a time-serving penalty. We've just been being Mr. Nice Guys and trying to work with everybody and, making sure that we're massaging. It's just over. The fact that we're talking about it to lead this podcast is the reason why I've just told everybody, okay, zero tolerance. Forget it. Let's go. No more. Just penalize it. That's it. It's not a change. There's actually two way bigger, more remarkable changes that are, could be really impactful. But we're leading with eye black. You guys are killing me. No, well, it just is.
I think it kills us, right? And I know Nova's feels the same way because it is so silly, right? And it feels so minute. Why, in your opinion, why has it become, like you said, it leads off the podcast after the rules meeting? The first text I fire off to these guys is, eye black's a minute penalty now. And, why do you think it's become so polarizing?
Because I think it's not a lacrosse thing that was the genesis of it with the NFHS. I think that eye black and the use of eye black on the cheeks, specifically in lacrosse, is different than other sports. I think if you look at face paint, eye black in football, and you go back to the days of me being a kid, you can pull up, the movie references and we don't even need to talk about it, that it wasn't necessarily sportsmanship and then, it kind of brought its way into the new century, and there was kids in other sports writing things in their eye black and whatever. But in lacrosse, it's part of the tradition and the culture from the Native American population first. And then, if you want to just talk mainstream culture and not even the tradition of the game, you look at guys like Mike Powell back in the day and doing things that were just, he's honoring the creators. The kids are watching the insanely awesome things he's doing and say, I want to be like him. And you still have the pros that are doing it now. And our kids want to be like those guys. I just think it's different in lacrosse. And I think that's why we think it's a big deal when everybody else looks at us and says, I don't understand why you all think this is a big deal. So we're kind of just at odds with each other.
So I guess one interpretation question, and I think I was thinking about this, right? So it's a hot day, you're sweating, you wipe your eyes, right? All of a sudden, your single line of eye black becomes a smear, becomes a smudge. Talk to me through that situation.
I am going to tell you that I'm. I was actually going to say I'm not going to go down this path with you while I'm about to go down this path with you. So I'll just go down the path with you. I have to believe that our guys are going to inject common sense into this, right? And like my hope is that we look at that and go like, okay, that's not the thing, right? That's not the thing that deserves the penalty. Like that was a thing that then was influenced by the weather and the right. And we're going to just use common sense and say, don't penalize that. That's how I would walk you through that.
Makes sense. Nova, you got anything on eye black, or are you sick of the topic too?
No. I mean, I see both sides of the topic. Again, I mean, I remember myself, wearing, the triangles and the backwards sevens and everything in between. Obviously, there's people out there that are doing it for wrong reasons. Again, I've never met a person that has, or really even heard of someone that has. But again, I can fully believe there's someone out there that has. I just think it's interesting that it hasn't kind of been overly populated into meaning everything. Like you're taking away eye black, but you're still allowing a kid to have tape on his helmet and have actual words that are a lot easier to write on. It doesn't make sense to me. I feel like those kind of things are a lot more visible on the outside versus a kid wearing a couple of eye blacks or has a lot of shadow all over his eyes in that regard. And I felt like if you want to kind of be a little bit more strict with the rule and things like that, I think there was a lot more different ways to kind of target those kind of things while still allowing the culture and the things that we're trying to do. And again, kids just like doing it at the same time too. And it's not creating harm. But again, I see the other side of it as well. I think that was the only thing when I'm hearing eye black is like, why is that tolerated? Why can you have, things written on your wrist? But eye black is the thing that's now the 1 minute penalty.
And it's funny because I think like a lot of the things that the NFHS is worried about, like, well, what we might do that is unsportsmanlike with the eye black. I feel like as an official, I have a manner that I can address that. Like, right. If you do something that is unsportsmanlike in your eye black, I can penalize you for unsportsmanlike conduct. I don't need to penalize you for eye black. But, again, like, I think that maybe I let everybody in there that, like, this isn't a rule that I love, but yet it's not my job to determine. Right. I mean, even though I sit on the committee, like sometimes you lose that battle, we just got to go and force it now. So that's it.
So you feel there are two bigger rule changes. What do you think are the bigger changes for this year? I have to guess the helmet coming off is probably.
Yeah. And I would actually bet that we're probably not done tweaking that rule. I proposed the rule change to the committee. Like we kind of went 90% of the way to where I wanted to go. I proposed the rule change in the manner that it is listed in the NCAA book. I wanted a technical foul, and the committee just kind of felt, no, we're not going to go that far. We're going to say you have to leave the field. So anytime anybody loses a helmet during the course of play, or as a result of something that happens during play, they have to leave the field. It is not a technical foul, meaning either a turnover or a time-serving foul, depending on who has the ball. But I think it's very impactful. You could potentially be losing a impactful player in an impactful moment because they just didn't want to tighten their chin strap, or they choose to wear it over the front of the chin on that near that bottom lip because it's more comfortable for them. Like, I don't know. Go put on a football helmet and tell me how uncomfortable you think your lacrosse helmet feels after you wear the football helmet for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that it's also one of those like you can control fouls. Like obviously, totally. if you get demolished, right, it's probably going to be a time-serving penalty anyway. and why do I need to lose my helmet in the process? And that's how guys are breaking their nose or busting their lips, stuff like that, as the helmet comes off, it's hitting, part of your body. So I agree. I think that I think it's just one of those things that it's like you, and I think, Keith, I think you worded it perfectly. That is a foul that is super lacrosse specific. It's like in the terms of play, the helmet comes off, big hit, whatever. But like we said, and I don't mean to go back to it, but like you said, the eye black thing is just, it's based on in other sports. And I think that was a really good point you made there. But I agree. And I think it's interesting, and I think it goes back to, the player safety part of it as well.
And that, like, quite honestly, this is one of those things that, like, I was like very upset about. Like, if I don't really get upset about too many things, but like in the world of officiating, like this was like a cascading effectual type of thing with kids not wearing their helmet, right? Because obviously we have an emphasis on hits to the head, right? For very good reason. We have a ton of science that says, hey, we want to prevent our kids from getting hit in the head. Duh, in 2024. Now somebody's not wearing their helmet, right? Now the helmet comes off, either because of a foul or not a foul. Let's say it's not a foul. Now you all are in my rear end. How is my kid's helmet coming off? Well, because your kid ain't wearing it right. No, he's wearing it right. Now it's an argument, right?
Right.
What am I? Am I passing on hits to the head in 2024? Like, of course not. But it just creates this situation that is insane. And then if we go a step further down that line, if now the kids are wearing their helmets the right way and a foul causes the helmet to come off, that's probably a kid we want to get seen by the trainers, right? Because if you wear your helmet actually the right way in a lacrosse game, it's hard for that helmet to come off. Really is. So like, I feel like this is actually a good warning sign that we should probably have somebody seen. So, this one just made a lot of sense to me in the way that, to your point, the other one does not necessarily make a great deal of sense in lacrosse. This one really does. And I think we're going to have a technical foul as we go forward. I hope we are, because that'll really hammer it home for the kids.
So obviously, we're a week into scrimmages. I know the weather wasn't great this week. Did you get a lot of feedback? Did you hear of any eye black penalties?
No.
Again, I know it's part of the stick check process. I know. So okay, because at least I know the weather wasn't great this week anyway. I'm sure there wasn't a day worthy of eye black, but I was just curious if you had heard any feedback about.
No, I don't think so. I actually bet from the feedback that I've gotten from the guys on your side of the sideline is that they know that most of their guys are not wearing eye black for the reasons that it was intended. So they're just going to tell them that they can't do it.
Makes sense. Great. So I think obviously Gil's not here today, and I know he had this idea, and I know. Talk to us a little bit about your background in sixes, Keith, because I think that's something that Nova and Gil and I are interested in, and kind of just want to hear a little bit about your background in the sport.
So, I think sixes. I have a lot of experience in sixes, and I'll get to that in a second. Like, the evolution of the world lacrosse game, that we just built this version of lacrosse a couple of years ago, because we knew that it had to happen in order to get into the Olympics. There wasn't a real formal process for this is what makes a sixes official for an international event. The world lacrosse kind of picked us very informally to do things that was mostly based on our world lacrosse experience with the outdoor tens game. And I went to the world championships for tens in 2014. That was my first event that I qualified for. I tried out for the under 19 world championships back in 2009, I think was the tryout. I think the games were either in 2010 or 2011 in Finland, and I didn't get picked for that. Tried out to go to Denver, made it. I was low on the list of Americans. I think I was 11th or 12th or something out of the 17 or 18 Americans that they brought. And then after that, and to World Lacrosse's credit, we get evaluated crazy in these events. And it really is a merit pay system. So I did well in Denver. I ended up as the crew chief on I think the 8-9 game at the end of Denver, which I was really proud of. Then in 2017, I qualified for Israel, and I went out there as one of the top guys. And then tragically, my mother had an aneurysm in her brain rupture the first day that I was in Israel in 2018. So like I was in Israel for like 22 hours and got back on a plane and came home, and my mom ended up passing away. So like that was like a whole big thing. So then when we got to like 2021, which was the first really kind of like sixes anything that was going on internationally, was like the Pan Am Championships. And we were doing them in Florida. So I got asked to go to that. And that was kind of like a little bit more of everybody's like fly by night. We're figuring this out on the fly kind of thing. So I did that. Then in 2022, there was the World Games, not to be confused with the World Championships, like the World Games for every sport that isn't in the Olympics yet, down in Birmingham, Alabama, which let me tell you, Birmingham, Alabama in the summer, buddy, not a great decision. Okay. Hottest I've ever been in my life, but that's a whole different topic. Did the gold medal game in Birmingham in sixes in 22. Went to the World Championships this past summer in San Diego, which was great. And after Birmingham in 22, Carolyn Toll, who is a Canadian, she is the chair of the Sixes Rules Committee. She asked me to be on the Rules Committee after kind of our interactions in Alabama. So that was pretty awesome. So currently I have probably as much or more experience in sixes than any other male on the planet. And I'm on the rules committee, so I feel pretty good about where we're headed for 28. So hopefully I don't mess anything up between here and there.
Do you think that sixes could be an avenue for some New Jersey lacrosse programs that are not as traditionally strong? You know, there's programs that we all know of that are struggling with numbers and, you know, some resources. Do you think that could be something that, you know, in a few years that we kind of branch, right? We have a traditional 10-on-10 and a sixes, whatever development league, whatever you want to call it, you know, a spot for those schools that aren't, you know, as strong in lacrosse.
I will tell you this, and I think that the PLL Championship Series kind of proved this. Sixes will not only work for the developmental parts of New Jersey, which it 100% would. We could like the royal we, right? Like whoever we is, that just like the people that put the Curse Cup together could say, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go to this venue and there's 4 fields there and we're playing like real sixes, 30-second, like the full on version of this, and teams from schools. And it's going to be like an unofficial school championship. And it would be freaking awesome. I had like a lot of reservations about sixes when I first went into it. Like I didn't love the notion of not chasing shots out of bounds. I thought it was going to become like either all layups or nothing. And it's like really not. It is so much fun. But to your point, Billy, I think about the developing. I had said this when I came back from Palo the first time, because the first set of teams at that championship in 2021 were put together kind of haphazardly, and there were like some domestic kids, like full on, like the goalie for like Dominican Republic was like 15 years old, like, and he's like lives in Florida or something. You know what I mean? It was just that was who was playing in that tournament. And the level of play was not like the highest thing that I've ever seen, but the games were like 19-18 and it's over in 53 minutes. And it's just really fun. So you can't tell me that like Vineland and Oakcrest, like those kids would see so much burn. But like the problem is it's like very logistics heavy. Like to have like a real sixes game where something doesn't get messed up, like you need a lot of people.
Right.
You know, like at the table, like the scorer's table needs like 6 people because the game just goes too fast and you can't tell one kid to do everything that needs doing. It's not how it works.
Right. Nova?
Yeah, a couple questions. The first one was you said you tried out as a ref. How are you trying out for something? Can you explain that process? Because it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's actually changed quite a bit over the years. So like if I go back to 2009 for the U19 tryouts, um, that was as simple as USA Lacrosse uh, brought everybody together. And I actually think that was the year I think Timmy Flynn and Chuck Capel were the coaches of that team. Um, and there was like 4 or 6 teams of kids that were the correct age, and they divided those kids up. And for like 3 days, they just played games. And like that's what the tryout was. And then for a lot of USA Lacrosse's senior teams, like existence, that was how you tried out to be a member of Team USA Lacrosse too. Like you just like got brought to some place and you tried out. So like same deal for Denver. In 2013, we went to Goucher College. Like 2009 was at UMBC. 2013 we were at Goucher, and they just divided the teams up, and we showed up. Whoever got invited to try out, and we refed their tryout, and that was that. And then after Denver, like USA Lacrosse really moved, and I think a lot because of Coach Stanowski, um, moved to the USA Soccer model. Like there's more of a camp, and there's a lot of stuff going on all year long. You have those fall events, Super Sixes, like it's and Super Sixes now. It's like there's like a sixes, camp and team and stuff like that. Which really, this should be the way that it goes from a competitiveness standpoint. And like before 2018, we went down to IMG, where I know you're headed, Nova, because the USA did like a blue-white game in December, as their final kind of like, this is who we're going to bring to Israel. So it's kind of evolved. And what that's going to look like going forward, I think will largely be dependent upon what Team USA does for its own tryout. And, USA Lacrosse will invite our guys to officiate that, and then USA Lacrosse provides a list of names now to World Lacrosse that says, here's a list of our guys that are in good standing with us that have international experience, and then World Lacrosse will select who they want.
Any insight into that selection for them?
Zero.
Got it.
And that's like just super honest. That's not me being cagey. I think I'm in that player pool, so that it's logical that they would not tell me anything.
It's true.
Do more stuff and don't screw it up. That's probably the criteria, if I had to guess.
Right. Yeah, I guess the other thing I have is not really related, but for refs that are looking to still, be refs, obviously that deadline has passed, but I assume there's still a need for refs in New Jersey. And, any insight, and we had a ton of followers last year that watched this podcast last year. And, I know we had people reach out asking us like, what are next steps for that? Would you care to explain, if there's someone listening right now that they want to be a ref, what they can do to get the quickest way there?
Yeah. And yes, is the answer to your question, comment. We 100% need refs. Like, we gotta be developing people at every turn, and I hope that that's newer people, younger people. It's whoever wants to be involved, we're here for it, and we will meet you wherever you're at. In terms of your ability level, you could be a complete novice and know nothing about it, but you've ref football and basketball, to like you are a former player or just graduating high school. You can go to our website, which is the New Jersey Interscholastic Lacrosse Officials Association, NJILOA. It's NJILOA.org. And there's a bunch of contact info listed. There's cadet class info listed. We are done with that process for this year, but we want to get as many people in as we can. I'm still poking and prodding our board to allow us to train current high school kids so that we can get them before you all get your clutches on them to coach in the summertime. I would love to have them be reffing those games in the summertime. But I'm wading through some red tape there because I have a junior in high school at home here, that
Yes.
he's going to be taking the class, just to show you like how much I believe in this, and that like New Jersey, we're maybe a little bit behind on it, but I'm sending him to the Greater Philadelphia chapter next year to take the class, because like I look at him, and he's a kid who plays the game, like understands the game. He's 6'1" and 190 pounds and runs like the wind and has a brain. And he's like, yeah, I think I want to do this with you. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to go to college and then come home after reffing all this stuff with me in the summer, and then probably like 5 to 10 games a year when you come back from college every summer, so that when you're 22 years old, you're going to go right to work in college. Like, that's how this is going to work. So that then, like, what if we had, just think about it, what if we had 5 of those kids? Like, if we had 5 kids like that every other year, not even every year, but every other year, I got 10 kids who that at some point down the line here, 4 years down the line, are going to flood our ranks with a 22-year-old kid who knows the game with 5 years of experience. Yeah, we'll be okay if we can make that happen.
For sure.
I have to ask, and it's because you mentioned, so obviously New Jersey athletics and officials were very prominently in the scene a couple weeks ago with the Manasquan Camden boys basketball game. For anyone who might not have seen, there was a play at the buzzer. Manasquan got a shot off. Initially, it was ruled a good basket. Manasquan would have won. Massive upset over Camden. Ultimately, it was waved off after the fact. It comes out between screenshots and all this stuff. The shot was clearly good, but Keith, I'm curious, from your perspective, obviously you're a massive basketball fan, and, just putting on your officials hat for a second, talk to me about that situation. As a boys lacrosse official, a situation like that could happen. It's probably not as likely as with basketball, just because of, the nature of the smaller gym and stuff like that. But, talk to me about that situation and kind of, your thoughts about it.
Well, I'm going to talk to you. I want to talk about it from a like very global officiating perspective, and people are going to, I'm sure, because of the way we talked, about the lead up to this, they're going to apply this to the framework of that game. But I don't know the guys that were on that game. I don't officiate basketball, so like it's irresponsible of me to comment on that specific situation. But from an officiating perspective, I can tell you a couple of things. Number one, you're talking with each other at stoppages. Who's got this? Who's got the release? Who's got clock? What are we? You're talking in boys lacrosse. Is there, in the pregame, I'm asking, is there an automatic horn on the clock, or are you blowing a horn? Oh, we're blowing an air horn. Well, I can't tell you how important it is for you to blow that air horn at 0-0-0, because we are going off of sound and not sight on the scoreboard. Like, that's just how it is, right? So we're kind of preparing for that as officials. The only other thing I can say with confidence about that specific situation is that I will guarantee you that there are no people on this planet who slept less soundly than the guys on that game. Like, that is the kind of thing they, because I got, as you can imagine, I got asked this question quite a bit right when that happened. And I said, I can't even imagine being the guys on that game, because I don't know that I would sleep. I'm sure they didn't. I'm sure they lost, and people can come up, people on the internet are going to say whatever they want to say. These guys stink. They're this, they're that. Yeah, because that's what they did. They went in there and they wanted to get it wrong, right? Like, it's insane. That's an insane notion that I am certain that they felt horrendous about it. Now the NJSIA's rules about it and why we couldn't do anything about it are in place to protect officials. There's no doubt about that. Do I enjoy when there are mechanisms to prevent me from messing up? Of course. Like, we have instant replay in the NCAA this year. I've been a part of it. It's not perfect, but to the extent that we can use it in a timely manner, not a crazy amount of times, to ensure that we're not screwing somebody, yeah, I'm here for that. Game is about you guys and about the kids. Like, it's not about us. to my point from the beginning. Somebody that doesn't understand that I reffed 5 of their games already this year. Hey, good to meet you. Best compliment ever.
Right.
Have you ever experienced, not to that matter, because that blew up. That was the most viral thing for maybe a 48-hour news cycle. Have you ever experienced something like that in lacrosse? A play that was so bang bang that maybe you wish you could take back, or maybe you heard about from some of your partners?
Not with like the end of game implications of it, but like, yeah, like the bang bang nature of like crease play in lacrosse. Holy moly! Like and people kind of don't understand that, like, when I'm officiating something, like, just the exact number of things that I have to do on a given play, like, depending on the directionality of the player that's running at the goal. If he's running at me, I have to see whether he releases it before he releases it while he's grounded in high school. The ball is in flight. Is the ball in the goal? Does he touch something in here? So like I'm like watching a guy run at me, and now I'm seeing like him look at the ball go in the goal. Look it back to him again. Does his toe, glove, anything touch? Like, I'm looking at 3 or 4 different things. But if he's running away from me, I have a whole different set of things to look at from that exact same spot on the field. So it's not even like we always have a consistent job. There's just like 15 things to do, and it's really hard. So, like, I got crushed on the internet after a game a couple weeks ago. It was like the tagline on the Instagram reel was like, "Player robbed of goal of the year." And I'm like, number 1, I was right. Number 2, like, do you even have any idea like what was going on in my head in that 0.02 seconds of like, like, yeah, I watched that kid do one of the most amazing things I've ever seen a kid do. And I felt like crap saying it wasn't a goal, but like, what are you going to do? Like, this is life. But it's the job we sign up for, man. And it gets me going. And I just like being a part of it.
Nova?
No, I think you touched base on it. I mean, we just continue to get better every year. Officiating gets better every year, and obviously that's a credit. And I know that we need more officials, so hopefully, more people who are listening come out there and support them. And there's always going to be things that pop up. And I know I text Keith, pretty much every other week with something happen in my game. And, so even as a coach who's been doing it for 11 years, I'm still, having questions left and right and little things here and there. So again, it's like, I think our big thing that we touched on last year is there's always going to be a push and pull in terms of a back and forth. And as long as you have that honest back and forth, you're going to just continue to learn and grow. And that's how this game just continues to get better.
And Keith, honestly, sorry, Billy, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, like, I think that like anything in our lives, right? Like, we all get to know each other better, and we're not just like pawns to each other in this game where like you're the coach and I'm the ref. Like, it's are we as officials taking the time to be like empathetic to understand who you all are? Like, when you get to know somebody in life, in the world, like, you can understand why something is happening and then all of a sudden when we speak to each other, it's like, it's not just a transactional relationship there. And like, I feel like the Royal We are doing a better job of that, coaches and officials. And I think that's serving us really well, because for too long, I don't think that was happening. And it's probably because for a really long time, it was like officials shall just stand there and get yelled at. And then we run off the field and don't interact with anybody. Like, that's nuts. Like, we're people, you're people. We see each other everywhere, right? Like, the notion that I can't talk to you or ask you how your family is doing, or you do the same for me, is crazy. So I think we're headed, to your point, Nova, in a really good direction.
Keith, I think, before you head out, I think you gave some really good advice last year. In your perfect world, how do we have coaches and officials on the same page? And I think you gave some really good advice last year.
Oh boy, what did I say?
When you said ask questions, don't accuse. And I think, if you could, as your parting message, as we begin actual games tomorrow, right? What is the advice that you can give to coaches and players heading into the season of how we can work together, to feel good about the product we're putting on the field?
Yeah. I'll add to that actually, because as you were talking, I said, oh, I was thinking that, and I was also thinking, educate yourself. Like, how often and this is interesting because we had this happen the other day in a scrimmage. Like, scrimmage doesn't mean a ton. End of game situation, something kind of controversial happened. In my opinion, I thought the officials did a really good job of attempting to walk a team through two separate things that happened near the end of the game. And they were just kind of getting bombarded with, he was this and he was that. And the officials in both cases were like, yeah, he was. And that's totally legal. Like, so it was clearly a situation where not everybody was on the same page about what you can do, maybe. So the NFHS All Access app for boys lacrosse is $6, everybody. I mean, like, if you got an iPad, keep it in the bathroom. Maybe when you go in to do something, you read 4 or 5 pages of the rule book at a time. And I will guarantee every coach who's listening to this that if you actually just sit there and read the rule book and take the time to actually digest it, you'll every 4 pages, you're going to be like, oh, wow, really? Like that. I swear to God, if everybody gets on the same page educationally, then we ask each other questions. Hey, I was reading this. This is what I thought that was. Like, talk to me about why that wasn't this. Now, all of a sudden, wow, you put a ton of pressure on us as officials, right? Because you now know the rule. And if it's something that that puts us in a position where oh man, I'm a little unclear on that. And that was a really educated question. Now, I mean, come on, right? But that's what we should be doing. I think our officials should know the rules. And I think you guys should as well. So that's where I'm at.
I agree. Well, Keith, again, thank you so much for your time. Keith will be on the field this year. I know he loves officiating games, and like you were telling us, you love just throwing yourself on a game. Sometimes you just love being out there. So, again, thank you for everything you do for the sport. I think you're one of the great ambassadors for boys lacrosse in New Jersey, and even though we like to bust your gut a couple times, we do appreciate you and everything you do for the game. So again, thank you. I look forward to seeing you on the field this spring, and thanks for being on the podcast. We love having you on.
Boys, I love you guys too. Yeah, I appreciate the heck out of you guys, and I respect the heck out of what you do. Not only on the podcast, but certainly on the field.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. Awesome. Well, Nova, it's game week.
It is already, man.
I know. How was your last week of practice?
It was good. We're slowly starting picking out. We got to continue to find some personnel things, and we have a lot of holes to fill defensively that we're still kind of going through. But it's definitely getting better. It's moving in the right direction. I think we're gonna surprise some people with some places that people will be playing and whatnot. But it's about the flow of the people and realizing that every year is different. And I think the one thing for me right now is just realizing and you see it with professionals all the time is when you're winning and you're finding a ton of success, you're not as willing to kind of really do a deep dive and make changes. And I think I wouldn't say we by any means are struggling, but we probably haven't had our bar set as high as we'd like to have it already. And we're going through new things, and it's kind of a little bit eye opening. Things that we probably missed last year, could have done even better last year with some of the things that we're doing now. So we're excited, but I'm excited just for freaking get out there. Get that bad taste out of my mouth from last year and get this thing rolling again.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, same thing. I think personally last year expectations weren't super high. I think, middle of the pack, 12, 15 range in the top 10, top 20. Everyone was kind of like, yeah, there's some good pieces, and then, probably overachieved a little bit. And I think this year expectations are much higher. So I think we're kind of navigating that balance of having expectations and having some people really believe in you. And we had successful scrimmages, but kind of like you were saying, probably didn't have our best product on the field. So really want to make sure we're actually putting that best product out there. And want to make sure we're representing our best version of ourselves. And I think that that's something that we're working to strive for. And, you know, I'm looking forward to the regular season to, you know, there's no more excuses. You can't be just a scrimmage anymore. It's everything means something. So, you know, this week of scrimmages, like I said, the weather wasn't great. You know, it was rainy a couple days and stuff. But you hearing anything on the streets about how scrimmages went? I know, you know, I've heard Bridgewater's has looked pretty good in scrimmages. I heard you know, Ridgewood's looking pretty good. You know, any whispers you're hearing out there?
I'm hearing a ton of whispers, obviously in all aspects, from coaches, from players that I coach, and everything in between. You know, just so much being thrown at us, and again, it's really hard to kind of do a deep dive into scrimmages where, you know, guys are injured, guys aren't playing, just like us. We're trying to figure things out. So we're just moving pieces around at times just to see if there's anything that clicks. You know, some guys are having their, you know, it might be their last scrimmage on Thursday. So, you know, they're playing their full starters, and, you know, other guys are subbing their guys out, you know, at half because they got another scrimmage on Saturday. So it's really kind of hard to kind of get a true deep dive and really kind of get a sense of what's really going on. And we don't want to make too much noise in scrimmages, but there definitely were a few interesting things that I won't really get into right now because, again, it's just scrimmages. But you know, I'm hoping for some shakeup in our top 20 very early. But you know, we got what we got, and we'll kind of, you know, excited to see some massive week 1 games.
Without spoiling your sources, give me one nugget you heard that made you go, huh? I want one nugget, nothing crazy. I'm not asking you to reveal any sources, but just something that made you go, huh, that's interesting.
Bridgewater definitely was one where I've heard multiple sources that Bridgewater is definitely not going to be. I'm not going to say the word bad because they're always good, but they're not going to be as far off the mark as they normally are with losing Cordilla. And then I've heard good things about St. Augustine as well early in their scrimmages.
Nice. Well, as you mentioned, you know, it's week 1, and there are some absolute headbangers this week. But before we kind of break down week 1, I just want to do a quick recap of our top 20 heading into week 1. Obviously, we did not change anything this week because nobody's played an official game. And like you mentioned, you know, we don't put too much stock into scrimmages. So again, just real quick, the PlayFast podcast top 20, number 20, Morristown, number 19, Eastern, number 18, Montclair, number 17, Wall, number 16, St. Augustine, number 15, Gill, number 14, Chatham, 13, Ridge, 12, Westfield, 11, Bernards, 10, CBA, 9, Rumsted Fairhaven, 8, Manasquan, 7, Mountain Lakes, number 6, Summit, number 5, Don Bosco, number 4, Pingree, number 3, Seton Hall, number 2, Del Barton, and preseason number 1, Ridgewood Maroons. So, Nova, that leads us into our week 1 preview. And I broke it down into different tiers. So, tier 1 are games that are must watch. If you're a New Jersey lacrosse fan, these are games you have to have your eyes on. Tier 2 is just great lacrosse. And tier 3 is diehard fans will enjoy this game. You know, it might not be marquee top 20 teams, but could have some impact down the line. So, starting at tier 1, our must watch, probably game of the week. Del Barton Mountain Lakes, normally much later in the season, a rematch of the Morris County final. Nova, what are your initial gut thoughts looking at that Delby Mountain Lakes game?
For Mountain Lakes, just seeing some of the pieces they lost, and again, that's going to be the thing that we say for pretty much all these things. You know, kind of how does Mountain Lakes do at the face-off X, and kind of just, you know, do they kind of keep it close against the barn? And then obviously for Delby, you're seeing who all the places that they're, you know, replacing. You know, who's going to be those guys on the offensive side of the ball, who's going to play what on the defense. Obviously, they got a ton of talent, you know, especially at the LSM position. You know, who's going to be down at close, who's going to be in net. So I think, you know, just kind of figuring out those questions early on and what those coaches saw, you know, in the preseason is probably what I'm most excited about. Obviously, it's going to be a great game. But I think for me, it's kind of just seeing, you know, with pretty much a lot of these teams is like who these coaches thinks are going to be the next guys. And if there's any really young guys that are going to really be able to step up, you know, early on in this process.
Yeah, and I know Del Barton opens up tomorrow with Randolph, so they'll have a game in before Mountain Lakes. But I agree. I think you know, who's going to be the guy in goal for Lakes is definitely interesting. You know, Sentowski, who's currently at Salisbury, was incredible for them last year in net. I think it's going to be interesting for that. And then, like you mentioned, you know, Delby's got all these guys who on paper are these young studs, but it's going to be their first really, really big game, and it's going to be interesting to see. I wouldn't be shocked if that's a 1 or 2 goal game. On paper, it's our number 2 versus our number, I believe, 7 team. So on paper, you probably favor Delby by, 3 or 4. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 1 goal game in the fourth quarter. So our second game in the must-watch tier, Ridge versus Ridgewood. Last year, this is a game that was 4-3 that Ridgewood won. I think last year, Ridgewood was a little under the radar, kind of, not that they came out of nowhere, but I think this year they are going to be hunted every game. They're every team's Super Bowl. Every team's going to be gunning for Ridgewood. Ridge, graduated some pieces, especially their leading scorer and their, on paper, their top defenseman. But I think Ridge is a really strong team, have a great faceoff guy and a great goalie. I know Ridgewood, again, sounds like they have a pretty decent face-off guy, so I think that'll be an interesting one as well. Any thoughts on the Ridgewood game?
For me, just want to see how dominant Ridgewood really is. We have them obviously as our number 1 team. I think they're fantastic. Got the scrimmage on myself. I think they have all the pieces to be there for a while. But last year they had a lot of very close games. They always found success, and they, besides Bosco, able to find those wins. But they had a lot of close games. They didn't really just dominate people and kind of like we are the Curse Cup champions. And again, you don't always have to be that way. All that matters is kind of how you play at the end. But they had 1 goal game with Ridge last year. Ramapo was a 1 goal game. Chatham was a 2 goal game. Columbia was a 4 goal game, I believe. So they didn't really just exude dominance from the start to finish. And I want to see if they have that ability this year at this point in the season.
Yeah, and I think I agree. I think they lost that Ramapo game, so it's going to be interesting for sure. Our next tier 1 game, Summit versus Westfield. Again, a rematch. I believe it was the first Q4 game of the week last year. A rematch of the Union County final. Summit had Westfield's number last year. Westfield lost a ton to graduation, most notably Ryan Waldman, Trey Brown, Danny Hazard, the faceoff X, lost their goalie. So obviously, a lot of things are going to go through Cody Lamb, but I think Summit Westfield, I put in tier 1, on paper, again, you think Summit's probably a 3, 4, maybe even 5 goal favorite just because of what Summit did last year. But I think Westfield's one of those teams, one of those programs you just can't count out. Again, on paper, probably a downish year for Westfield. But what are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, you can never count Westfield out, but if there's one thing I'm gonna bank on because of history, and a lot of it is that Summit has Westfield's number. And when they want to take care of business, they're going to take care of business. I think Westfield having to play them so early is going to struggle a little bit because they have to find out who's going to be the supporting cast behind Cody. And I don't know who that necessarily is yet. Obviously, you mentioned a couple guys, they're going to fill roles and did see some time, but Waldman is no easy task to fill. And all of a sudden you got to go against that zone defense week 1. It's going to be a tough task. So again, I think it's just seeing, is he going to be able to get any support? And then for some, it's like, are they just going to rinse and repeat with that zone? Obviously, they got new guys playing in different spots, but I think they're going to be in a good spot.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting with Westfield, right? Like, I think where Cody finds most success, right, is attacking a rotating defense, kind of catching the ball in motion, getting downhill, and I think putting him as the ex-attackman kind of wastes him, right? So you don't want to put him behind the goal. So who's going to be the guy that's going to facilitate that offense? A lot of guys, play on a stronger club program. So, they're probably going to have some guys who just aren't super well known, but are going to step in. But, Colin Coyle is a known, but again, he's not a quarterback. He's a time and room guy. He's a shooter. So it's going to be interesting. Are they going to move, one of their middies to attack? Is a guy like Billy Gurney step into attack? I don't know. And again, what do they do defensively? It's not just Trey Brown that graduated. They graduated a ton of guys, and they bring back Mike Marshall, who's going to Cornell next year. He's fantastic, but I think Westfield right now has a lot of question marks. I think they have some really good games this week. We're going to find out a lot about them, and speaking of a team that you had mentioned that we've heard some really good things about, St. Augustine in our last Tier 1 game, opening up with playing Rumson Fairhaven. So we got St. Augustine, Rumson Fairhaven. What are your just initial thoughts, St. Augie's versus Rumson?
That game was electric last year. Being there was absolutely electric, and just we're just being a dead horse almost because just repeating with new guys that we want to see. But
Yeah.
I'm very interested to see in a lot of aspects is St. Augustine's gonna most likely win the face-off X, and is Rumson gonna be able to put goals in the back of the net at a high enough rate to kind of beat very good teams? I think that's a big question mark, and one I think we're really gonna want to see.
Yeah, had the chance to scrimmage Rumson this year. I thought one of their most improved players was Grayson Golden. He was absolutely electric for them. He was one of the better players on the field. Obviously, they have that massive defense. It'll be interesting, who's going to cover Noah Plen. Like we mentioned, Noah Plen's got to be on the short list for Player of the Year in the state of New Jersey. So who's going to cover him? Rumson definitely has options. They have two returning Division I defensemen. And then Brody Page in the midfield. So they're going to have the guys. So our Tier 2, which is just great lacrosse games. We don't have to dive too much into this one because we just talk about both the teams. But St. Augustine and Westfield playing this week as well. I think coming out of this week, we're going to find out a lot about these two teams. Between Summit and Rumson, and then playing against each other. It's going to tell a lot. If one team's 0-2 or if one team's 2-0, it's going to say a lot about them. Probably fly up the rankings for sure. But I think that's going to be a great game. And shout out to those guys for scheduling that. That's not an easy game week 1 for sure. Second one, I have a lot of personal investment in this one because I've staked my flag on Eastern being very good this year. Is Manasquan versus Eastern. Again, a game on paper, you probably favor Manasquan heavily. If you're just looking at the two names, you might think it's not going to be a super competitive game. But I think, like I said, we take a lot of pride in the research we do for this podcast. And, on paper, Eastern's got a very good team. They bring back a ton of pieces. Now, that being said, Manasquan's absolutely loaded as well. So I think there's a chance Eastern gets their doors blown off, but they're still a good team. And I think, with Coach Naz down at Squan, it's going to be interesting. But Nova, any thoughts on this game? I know, like I said, this is kind of personally a big game for me, but any high level thoughts?
Yeah, you definitely are definitely the highest on Eastern. But we're not too far behind you there. Obviously, if we both, me and Gil both thought they, were nowhere near our radar, they wouldn't be up there based on how we do our ranking sheet. They definitely have some guys that I think we want to see a close game. I think if we see a close game, that's exactly what we need to see. I'm 100% going to pick Manasquan to win that game by a few goals, if not more. But if Eastern finds a way to kind of keep it close, keep it competitive, maybe even for 3 quarters, and they just run out of gas in the 4th quarter, that's going to kind of be what we need to see to keep them in that top 20 list. And it's a great week 1 matchup, and be more so players versus players. Not too much scouting going on, and we'll see what both of those teams are made of. And if Manasquan is who we think they are, it's going to be a rout, and it's going to be no issue.
Yeah, I believe that game is actually at 10 or 11 a.m. tomorrow. We're recording this Sunday night, obviously. So by the time you hear this podcast or watch this podcast, you will know if I look like a fool. Next up, Don Bosco Prep and Iona Prep. Iona Prep, obviously not a New Jersey school, but interestingly enough, they play a ton of New Jersey schools. So I think a result against Iona Prep carries more weight than, I know you guys are going to Florida, obviously. However you do against IMG and Lake Mary, great, but it's hard to compare it just because of what we see here. But like I said, Iona Prep plays. I know CBA. They've played Seton Hall in the past. They play a handful of New Jersey teams. So I think we can kind of use some deductive reasoning and kind of compare scores. It's not the craziest game of the week, but I think I have it here because I think it's going to be interesting to see where Don Bosco's at. Again, we've heard did a nice job in the scrimmage. I think that the first week of the Matt Lane era, what does that look like? How are they preparing? And Iona Prep's a good team. they are traditionally a team that they'll beat some of the New Jersey teams. I think they had a pretty, at least competitive game with you guys a couple times. So I think that, again, it's not the sexiest game just because we don't know Iona Prep that well. But I thought it deserved to be here just because, like I said, it's going to give us a really good idea of where Don Bosco is, heading into this, this season.
I got nothing on that one. You're right. You're right there.
And then the last two games are two games that are near and dear to you and I. First off is Pingree versus Bridgewater, and Seton Hall versus Chatham. For Seton Hall versus Chatham, it was a game that was, I'm sure for you, unexpectedly much closer than a lot of people thought it would be last year. I believe that final was 6-4 over at Rutgers. Chatham graduated a lot. They lost their goalie, but they bring back JP Lagunowich. They bring back some good young talent defensively and some key pieces offensively. So I think it'll just be a good test to see, where's Chatham, and then, like we said, you guys coming back from Florida, where do you stand with New Jersey lacrosse? Obviously we're rooting for you once you do well down in Florida, but at the end of the day, it doesn't mean a ton to me. It's just, like that's great. It's awesome to play super competitive out of state competition, but it's like, okay, you did that. You did what you need to do. I'm going to say, knock on wood, you accomplished what you wanted to accomplish. Now let's see you come home to New Jersey and see what that looks like for you guys. As an outsider, what does Pingree Bridgewater, mean to you?
Quite a good deal, because there always been good battles, and always, your county tournament final for the most part, and everything in between. So I think we're looking to see Pingree just do what they did kind of in that final, and just really kind of just dominate, especially with the losses that Bridgewater suffers. And then on the other side, I already mentioned Bridgewater, where I'm hearing a ton of good things about what they've done in scrimmages. Obviously, we have them outside our top 20, which again, definitely, some people would look at us very, very funny. And, if they keep that even close, that's right there. Like, okay, they're definitely already deserving that they got to be there. But, if Pingree, showcases that they're, that a top 5 team, and a team that is going to absolutely fight for that non-public, it could be a very different story.
Yeah. All right. Our tier 3 games are games that, again, aren't super sexy or outstanding on paper, but if you're a diehard lacrosse fan, you're going to really want to catch these games. And again, not a whole lot of details for this one, but I think these are games that are just, I saw them and I was like, oh, that I'm intrigued. First off, Caldwell versus Cherokee, the defending Group 4 South champs versus the defending Group 1 North finalists in Caldwell. Nova, anything on this game?
Yeah, we have Caldwell right on our outside. And I think Cherokee, honestly, is not too far behind with the success that they had last year as well. I think it's two great teams in that probably where we would have in the 20 to 30 range battling against each other. And, that's exactly a type of game, if you're just a lacrosse fan, that you want to go see. And it's going to be very telling, depending on where the score is, where those kind of teams are at, in their group this early in the season.
Yeah. Next up, Ocean City versus Wall. I think, Ocean City has one of the best players of the state in Pat Grimley, going to Harvard next year. Super fun player, lefty, kind of a do-it-all guy for them. And then for Wall, it's the first, with first week of the post John McCurry era. I think Wall has a pretty tough week. There's no gimmies. So I think Wall's a team that, could be sitting at 3-0, sitting at 0-3, and it's not super stunning either way. We did have them in their top 20 with some question marks. So I'm intrigued to see where that one goes. Our next game, Somerville versus Bernards. Again, on paper, you think Bernards is a heavy favorite, but I think this is, in my 4 years being in Somerset County, the most hype around Bernards I've heard. And beyond just county stuff, like statewide, Bernards is probably one of the most talked about teams right now. How are they going to handle that pressure? How are they going to handle all the eyes on them and all the opportunity that comes with being a top 12, top 10 team in the state? And Somerville's not a pushover. Coach Lovejoy does a really great job. They got some returners. They bring back a senior goalie. They have a strong faceoff guy. I know Evan Duprat. They have a Richmond commit as well. So I think Somerville's a good team. I think Bernards should blow them out, or should be, again, I use the word blowout harshly, but it should be a probably a 7 to 10 goal win, you would think, on paper. So I'm curious to see where Bernards is. How is Bernards going to handle all this hype?
Yeah, it was a 2-goal game last year, I think, when they played Somerville. So and Berners returns pretty much everyone. So are they able to be that hype train that everyone's kind of talking about? Because they certainly have some hype, and I know we've talked many times that we expect them to kind of skyrocket up in our rankings pretty quickly. But it's a good first opening test to kind of just prove it. Like, go out there, just not blow out a team, but take care of business, and kind of be like, yeah, we're here this year, everyone.
Yeah. Our next game, I had to shout out Mercer County, my home where I grew up. Princeton versus Hopewell Valley. Princeton High School, Hopewell, probably two of the better teams in the CVC this year. It just kind of setting the tone for what the season is going to look like. Princeton led by Pat Kenna and Brandon Beatty. Kenna committed to Lafayette, Beatty committed to Vermont. Taking on a Hopewell Valley team, just super gritty, hard nosed. Doesn't have the names that are going to jump off the paper. Luke Caldwell, probably their top player, but they're not going to shock you. But this is a really, really well coached team, and again, not going to change the shape of New Jersey. These are two teams probably in the 40s to 50s, but I think it's just interesting. It's an early season, in county rivalry, two of the better teams, and quite frankly, Princeton. One of the better coaching staffs in New Jersey between Chip Casto, Jason Carter, and Peter Stan. So I think they have a chance to be one of the stronger teams in the CVC. And I like these two schools. I think they're good people. So in our last game to highlight, it is a charity game again this year. West Morris versus Gill St. Bernard's. It's a game. The proceeds are going to Cancer Research Cancer Foundation. Obviously, Coach Byron Collins, someone you and I both care deeply about. Nova, his wife, still continuing her fight. So we pray for her and we pray for Byron and his family. But this game is special. These two schools are very close to each other, and Gill again is a team that we have very high in our rankings and think could be really strong this year. So
nailed it.
Absolutely. All right, Nova, our final piece before we head out, our
Ooh.
pick'em contest. I believe I have to go back and confirm. I believe you were the winner of last year's pick'em.
You're correct.
You and Gill were neck and neck. I was winning. I was dominant. I was killing you guys. And then there was a week I went like 0-5 and I just fell off. I was chasing you guys the rest of the way. So I tip my cap to you, Nova. You were the winner. Your trophy's in the mail. But it's a new year. It's a new season. I'm coming for that ass. Let's go. All right, our first game, Ridge versus Ridgewood. Who you got?
Ridgewood.
Yeah, I got Ridgewood. Not the sexiest one to start us off with. I 100% think that I could see it being a competitive game. If we were doing spreads, maybe that's a different conversation. But I think, straight up, just picking a winner, I think it's got to be Ridgewood. Our next one, Summit versus Westfield. I'm going to take Summit. I think that, again, I'm not writing off Westfield. I think that I think week one, again, going against that zone, I think Summit's the pick.
For all the things I mentioned when talking about that game before, I'm going with Summit.
Our next game, Caldwell versus Cherokee. I think this is our first game that you and I know nothing about either team, really. So you get to go first.
I'm going to go Caldwell.
All right, great. I wanted Cherokee. All right. I have no reason to pick Cherokee. I don't even know where this game is. I should have double checked, but I think, Caldwell and Cherokee going to be a far drive for one of those teams. So I think Caldwell kind of has, Cherokee has the pedigree, defending Group 4 South champions. I'm gonna take them week one. Give me Cherokee. I believe in them. Next up, Bergen Catholic versus CBA.
This game is going to be way closer than many people probably expect, but I got to go with CBA. They're in our top 20, so I got to go with what we have going on right here. But I think this game could surprise some people.
I think this game is going to be incredibly close. I'm also going to go with CBA. I think this could be a like 6-5, 5-4 kind of game. For CBA, like I said, you got Quinn Kelly, Luke Krebs, Jackson Gervais, Brandon Decina in net. They have a really, really stout defense. In talking with coaches, their coach specifically, they're figuring stuff out. They're a young team offensively, but they're figuring stuff out. They're definitely trending the right direction. I think there's going to take a little time to gel and improve, but I think they probably have a little more pieces right now than Bergen. Bergen with a strong goalie in Parker Day. But the first week of the Frankie Feaster era for Bergen, I'm going to go with CBA. And then our final game, Haddonfield versus Lenape. Another game that, some knowns, especially for Haddonfield, but a game that I think could be a toss-up.
I got to go Haddonfield.
Yeah, I'm going with Haddonfield too. I think Blaze Coley leads the way for them. I know they got some other nice pieces. Coach Sutphin does a great job with Lenape. So definitely think they'll be in the picture for sure. But I'm going to go with Haddonfield. All right, that about does it for this week. Again, looking forward to a great week of lacrosse, some absolute great games. I believe next week we have some exciting guests on the docket, maybe trying to get some of the guys from NJ.com to come on. We also have Dan Kaplan from Inside Lacrosse, their brand new high school boys lacrosse writer, will be joining the podcast in the next few weeks. So really excited for what we have coming up. Obviously, Nova, Gill, and myself are going to be out on the field coaching as well. Some really big games coming up. I know Gill opens up his season with Gill St. Bernard's, I believe, Tuesday or Wednesday this week. So it's going to be a great week. Nova, thank you for being here. To everyone listening, I hope you had a happy Easter or whatever holiday you celebrate. Nova, any parting words?
Let's get after it. It's going to be a fun season.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't believe we're here. Everyone stay healthy, stay safe, have a great spring lacrosse season, and we will see you next week.